It's good to know you are watching AFRIQUE Media. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this midweek edition of the program. This is Inside Africa, a two-day workshop to come up with possible strategies to better the sectors of water, hygiene, and sanitation in Cameroon has kicked off in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, co-organized by the Ministry of Water and Energy alongside UNICEF. The come together of operators of the sectors will solve the issue of water crisis, hygiene and sanitation in the country. Marigority Wifengla tells us more.
The issue of poor hygienic and sanitary conditions still remain a common issue in Africa, Cameroon inclusive. Stagnant water almost everywhere, inhabitants are doing little or nothing to see to it that these disgusting images are wiped out. The waters which could be attributed to poor drainage has been identified amongst the principal causes of deadly diseases affecting the continent. Diseases such as malaria, typhoid, tetanus infections, rashes, to name but a few, has now become the order of the day. The absence of good and hygienic latrines could also be very dangerous to the health, most especially that of children. The picture created in the minds by just a glance is that of disgust and pessimism. To crown it all, the issue of water crisis in Cameroon is also a despicable one. Although there is a saying that water is life, in Cameroon some areas live for months without drinkable water. It is in light with these critical issues that the Ministry of Water and Energy, alongside operators of the different sectors of water, hygiene and sanitation, are deliberating on possible measures to curb these social and environmental ills in Cameroon.
The Association of Cameroon English-speaking musicians is currently training its members in a three-day workshop which is intended to improve the quality of music production, boost earnings, and improve the living standards of musicians. The three-day seminar was opened on August 12 by the Secretary General at the Ministry of Arts and Culture. Sixtus Mbom has the details.
At the opening of the three-day seminar for English-speaking musicians in Cameroon, the representative of the Art and Culture Minister, Usman May, who is the Secretary General at the ministry, urged musicians to pay particular attention to courses on the importance of messages in music. He said that this would enable them to produce meaningful music that can build the country and move away from the bandwagon of immoral music. Francis Atebazor is the president of this association, which is being supported by the U.S. Embassy in Yaoundé and the Ministry of Arts and Culture.
The objective of the workshop is to improve on the capacities of our artists to produce works that are more competitive. Because up till now, most of our artists get into the field just with their raw talent. But to this talent needs to be added information on how the works can be produced so that they can be competitive beyond our borders. And so during these 3 days, we're going to have some of the best professionals we have in the country, some university professors who accepted to do research, and they are going to give us some of those tips that will make our works more competitive.
Most Cameroonian musicians do not know how to get their products to the public. They are expected to be able to promote and market their albums in ways that will minimize the effects of piracy and improve their living standards.
I believe so much this time something will change, because with the nature of my country, there's proof that music can only succeed when the government, the culture supports. So our country is not like the other countries where an artist, you can just compose your song in the studio, you go there, you look for one marketer, they market it. No, but our situation here mostly depends on government. But now since the culture, the Ministry of Culture have decided to look into it, like putting up workshops and promoting other stuff, I so much believe this is gonna work.
Pray for peace. Let's show for peace.
In Ghana, over 100 research scientists and farmers from across the country have met at Fimesa near Kumasi on new developments in integrated pest management. They were drawn from some of CSIR's institutions across the country.
It has been established that pest infestation on crops continue to impact negatively on crop yield, consequently affecting efforts at addressing food security. The use of chemicals to control pests, though very effective, apart from the cost involved in its applications, has adverse effects on the health of consumers. It is for this reason that the scientist farmers were brought together to be sensitized on how to control pests by the use of chemical ecological tools that are secured and environmental friendly. The Deputy Director of the Crops Research Institute, Dr. Joseph Lamte, said things are changing fast in the field of technology in pest control on food crops, and therefore stressed the need for research scientists to update their knowledge to be abreast of time.
There are opportunities to do things differently without necessarily resorting to the use of chemicals or chemical pesticides for that matter, so that we can have sustainable management of pests and diseases without necessarily breaking down the environment.
One of the speakers, who is a research scientist from the United Kingdom, Professor John Pickett, said a research conducted in East Africa on crops such as maize, wheat, rice and cashew revealed that intercropping is the best method of fighting some of the pests that destroy crops. He said while some of the crops serve as hosts to pests, others strongly dispel them through emission of some chemicals. These chemicals, he noted, can be studied and applied effectively to control diseases caused by the pests. Another resource person, also a research scientist from the United Kingdom, Dr. Mike Beckett, told GTV he was confident that they have refreshed the minds of participants about new trends emerging in pest control management.
From Ghana, let's make a shift over to Nigeria, where more than 250,000 farmers have access to fertilizers in the ongoing e-wallet system of fertilizer distribution in Bauchi State. This was made known when the Director of Federal Ministry of Agriculture Bauchi office visited some sales outlets in some local government areas.
While victims of the last disaster in Pengana chiefdom of the local government are still counting their losses, another disaster struck, this time affecting some communities in the three chiefdoms in Basa local government area. Director of Relief and Rehabilitation, SEMA, said they are on an on-the-spot assessment to ascertain the level of damage caused by the unfortunate incident. He, however, advised the council management to always intimate the agency on any future occurrence.
Appropriately, we'll just report to government and see the next level of action.
Management Committee Chairman of the Council commended SEMA for the prompt response and called for immediate attention for those affected.
That we are going to solve this problem, do our own part immediately before SEMA will come in. At least by next week, we will see that we will assist them.
Victims of the incident also called on authorities concerned to come to their aid as all their crops have been destroyed. Barely a week ago, heavy hailstorms wreaked havoc, destroying farmlands and crops such as cabbages, carrots, Irish potato, tomato, rooftops of classrooms and houses, among others.
Now, United Nations forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo will begin targeting rebels on the coming months. The country has been blighted by years of civil war and internal conflict. Up to now, peacekeepers have been tasked with protecting civilians, but this is about to change.
Tanzanian special forces have learned that a group of rebels is hiding in a camp. These elite UN troops storm the base, going from tent to tent, capturing any rebels they can, killing those who resist. It is, of course, just a bit of theatrics, but it does have a serious purpose. The troops have been training at their new base outside Goma, practicing the kinds of missions they'll be expected to carry out in the coming months. This is UN peacekeeping as you've never seen it before. a new muscular force that isn't just protecting civilians, it's going after the rebels.
As per mandate of the resolution 2098, we are to disarm these armed groups by force of arms, if need be, to ensure that at the end of the day, there is some peace and security in this general area. So that's why I'm saying it is a peace enforcement.
The intervention brigade is a new concept for the United Nations, but the African Union has been doing something like it for years in Somalia. The troops there have joined the government against the rebels. Any pretense of neutrality is gone. But it has come at a price. They've taken on an experienced and well-armed enemy that knows the ground intimately. The AU troops have suffered heavy casualties. Bentra Basimwa is the political chief of M23, the rebel movement that he is most likely to be first on the list for disarming. He told me that up until now, they've seen the UN as a stabilizing force.
If they change and they consider us as M23 as a group which must be disarmed by force, I think it will be a big mistake. But I believe that they know that.
Intervention Brigade troops move through Goma to the front lines. This is part of the training, getting to know the area. They still haven't been ordered to begin operations. And so the Intervention Brigade soldiers continue their reconnaissance. They expect their orders to fight will come in September.
Over in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta has given an ultimatum to county commissioners to hand in their strategies for combating drug abuse. Critics are faulting the government's apparent new formula to rid Kenyans of this thorn in the flesh.
The brownish liquid goes into the syringe. Brown sugar, she calls it. She injects the heroin into her bloodstream. This is her second dose of the day. By the time she goes to bed, she'll have injected herself with at least 5 more doses, just enough to sustain her usual level of intoxication. Right beside her is her partner in crime, her 14-year-old daughter. She is yet to graduate into using the syringe, so for now, she simply puffs the drug.
Mamangu akaja akaugua, akafariki. Alivyofariki sasa ndo nilianza kuchanganyikiwa na maisha, mara nikajikuta nimeingililia uraibu wa madawa ya kulevya.
By age 18, Zafina, not her real name, was already hooked to heroin. By the time her daughter was turning 11, she was also a regular user.
Maisha yangu sasa ni sina kazi, nikaa naenda kujiuza mwili wangu ndo nishughulikie mtoto wangu.
But over the years, this tale has become almost synonymous to the coastal region. Zafina and her daughter are simply a representation of a much bigger population that is addicted to drugs down at the coastal cities. And this is the president's latest strategy to bring down those numbers.
County Commissioner na watu yake, baada ya miezi 6 na imebaki miezi 2, tunakutana pahali tulikuwa tu, kila mtu alete ripoti yake aseme amefanya nini kwake.
Putting county commissioners on notice, however, has further complicated the fight against drug abuse in the country. Stakeholders say a more elaborate plan is needed to deal with the vice.
Zile sehemu ambazo hapa Kenya ambapo hakuna madawa ya kulevya, karibuni kutakuwa watu wanatumia madawa ya kulevya wengi kuliko zile sehemu ambazo watu walianza kutumia zamani.
The National Authority Against Drug Abuse, NACADA, agrees with that statement. Its survey last year showed Coast Region as leading in the number of drug addicts hooked on cocaine, heroin, piped tobacco, cat or better known as miraa, bang and cigarettes. Western Region leads Chang'aa, bang and tobacco use. Nairobi residents mostly use tobacco, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, bang and inhalants. In northeastern, piped tobacco, cat and kuber are the most abused drugs. In Nyanza, alcohol and bang take the lead, while eastern Kenya residents are abusing alcohol, cat and cocaine. Central Kenya is battling the addiction to alcohol and cigarettes. Rift Valley recorded high numbers in Chang'aa addiction.
Whether county commissioners will manage to nip this vice in the bud remains to be seen. But until then, addicts like Zafina and her daughter continue to huff and puff their lives away.
Still in Kenya, the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture has summoned the Agriculture Cabinet Secretary over the state of affairs in the sugarcane subsector. The committee says sugarcane farming plays an important role in the economy, and the Cabinet Secretary therefore must present a plan on how he intends to solve the numerous challenges facing the industry.
Sugarcane has defined Western Kenya's economy for many years, but the future of this sweet industry looks sour. Already, sugar production falls far short of demand, and challenges such as cane poaching and cheap sugar imports are sending sugarcane millers into a financial crisis.
We have more than 30 metric tons of sugar which has not been sold in Zoria, Mumias, Sony.
So bad is the situation that the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture summoned the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture Felix Koskei, the Kenya Sugar Board and Mumias Sugar Company management in a bid to get to the root of the problem. But the Cabinet Secretary was a no-show.
It appears the Cabinet Secretary is feeling too important to be able to come before this committee.
We are dealing with a sector which is in ICU as we're talking. And we needed to hear the input from the executive itself in regard to this matter.
The committee heard that the Cabinet Secretary was attending a cabinet meeting, hence his absence. Members, however, refused to continue with the meeting without Koskei and directed that he appear before them on the 27th of this month without fail.
The Cabinet Secretary should not in any way delegate duties of the Committee of the National Assembly to any other officer.
Mumias Sugar, on the other hand, was represented by the chief executive himself, the company's secretary, and a lawyer whose presence bothered the committee.
I brought him here so he can be able to give me guidance in case questions are asked, whether I'm present to respond or not.
When you appear before this committee, you are obliged to answer each and every question. You have no other reference to look behind you or besides in order to be given guidance on what to say.
The committee then resolved that the lawyer was a stranger and was asked to leave. Mumias Sugar Management will also appear before the committee on the 27th of August.
Moving on, African leaders have called on Kenya to hand over the control of the port city of Kismayo to Somalia's central government. The two countries have been at loggerheads since Kenyan troops invaded Somalia in 2011 to fight Al-Shabaab fighters.
African leaders contributing troops to fight the Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia have called on Kenya to hand over the control of the city of Kismayo to the Somali government. The regional leaders made the decision after passing a resolution over the issue in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. The resolution would end a month-long dispute between Somalia and neighboring Kenya. Relations between the two countries hit an all-time low after Kenyan troops invaded Somalia in October 2011.
The Kampala summit was a fruitful one. As leaders, we agreed on the need for the key infrastructure in Jubaland to be handed over to the Somali federal government, as provided for by the Provisional Federal Constitution. This agreement is good for Somalia, and especially to the inhabitants of the Juba regions.
Tensions have been simmering for months between Kenya and the central Somali government. Mogadishu has for long accused Nairobi of backing this man, Ahmed Madobe, a former warlord whose militia fought beside the Kenyans and who now controls the port city of Kismayo. Analysts say that the Kampala agreement will boost the economy of the federal government through trade at the lucrative port of Kismayo.
If this thing happens as it is agreed upon, I'm sure that this will contribute much to the economic aspect of Somalia and also enhance the revenues and income Somalis get from their economic infrastructures.
But Kenya is against calls for its forces to cede control of the Kismayo port and airport to the Somali government. Analysts say that the agreement is not likely to work out unless Kenyan forces stop siding with the regional administration.
As long as Kenyan forces are backing Ahmed Madowe, who is actually currently the president of the regional administration of Jubaland State, I think this agreement will not be implemented and the government will not have the power to take over the control of the seaport and the airport.
Regional leaders also stressed that in line with UN Security Council resolutions, all parties should adhere to a ban on the exportation of charcoal. The UN monitoring group's recent report on Somalia accused Kenyan forces of aiding charcoal export through Kismayo. Somalia says charcoal exports through the port city have been benefiting regional militias.
In other news, African countries have held a meeting in Ethiopia to review a trade agreement with the United States. Officials say the deal, which was struck in 2000, favors American companies and limits Africa's exports to the U.S.
In May 2000, the United States of America passed the African Growth and Opportunity Act, also known as AGOA. The principal objective of AGOA was to facilitate the integration of sub-Saharan African countries into the global economy by providing preferential access to the U.S. market for exporters from these countries. However, over 13 years down the road, the continent is not yet satisfied. The U.S. has been blamed for imposing numerous non-tariff barriers, restrictions and complicated paperwork that in the long run could prevent African businessmen from competing with American companies. African countries have now held a meeting in Ethiopia to discuss the act. They say that they want the administration of President Barack Obama to redefine its trade intentions with Africa.
Indeed, the opportunity offered through AGOA was and remains immense, but due to severe supply-side constraints, its potential benefits were far from realized.
It's for us then to engage the U.S. in terms of opening the scope and make sure that then the accessibility can be much more better.
The trade relationship has instead given American companies the opportunity to massively increase their exports to Africa. AGOA also excludes specific agricultural products such as sugar, peanuts, dairy and tobacco, which are among the main revenue-generating commodities for many African countries from the American market. In addition, U.S. subsidies for domestic producers such as the cotton subsidies eliminate any competitive advantage for Africa's agriculture sector.
Expand the range of products to include those products in which Africa has a comparative advantage. And there are a number of them that indeed Africa can export immediately to the U.S. if this were done.
Under the Act, some of Africa's least developed countries like Lesotho, Malawi and Madagascar can only export textile to the U.S. Ethiopia, for example, says its exports to the United States are only limited to leather and textiles.
It is on that note that we come to the end of today's edition of Inside Africa. Thanks for always taking our time to be with us and keep watching AFRIQUE Media for more news.